Hey, good morning. A second here. Second. I'm laughing because my web browser is like jiggling. I never saw this before. What the hell's doing it? I don't know. Anyway, well, these markets are trying to make this turn on this retest pattern that we spoke about yesterday, and yesterday spoke about potential W retest pattern here versus the continuation pattern lower on the weekly. We didn't get any resolve yesterday, so just everyone being a little hesitant. Of course, news coming out. The S&Ps had to get closer. Well, let's go to SPY. They had to get closer down to this prior low before anyone felt somewhat comfortable to do a little buying. Came in and you can see the little rip off of the low there as it got close. So majorities, I guess, looking the same areas, cover shorts, and any real buying, I suppose, would have taken that a bit higher. But you see the futures, which we just were looking at, were a little closer to that low. And so we'll see if it makes the turn. We'll see where this is really not gapping much. It's just gapping, give or take, near the prior day's close. So not a big deal on the gap. Things just aren't moving very much. I see more as I look at individual stocks. I see more things that are moving lower, but most sectors did nothing yesterday. If you look at all the S&P sectors, they didn't really do too much. Just hanging out, waiting for that news to come out and see which way things are going to go. So futures, you see they're coming a little closer to the bottom there, buyers stepping up, and we'll see whether it can make some kind of a turn. I don't suspect there's going to be anything meaningful going on until some of this inflation news comes out and institutions can see whether there might be some reprieve to the Fed thing. The Fed isn't giving any indication that that's the case. Is news coming today? I looked over the weekend. Let me see. I can tell you. Countries clear. Tuesday, 11 o'clock, consumer inflation expectations. And there's a couple of auctions. And then tomorrow, PPI, core PPI, that's going to be a bigger piece of information tomorrow at 8:30. And then tomorrow at 2 o'clock is FOMC minutes. And Thursday is more inflation stuff, a whole lot of stuff, jobless claims. So, and then Friday is Michigan consumer sentiment. That could be a mover. So, and then there's the earnings reports, financial earnings reports that are coming out that we'll see what they all do. Yeah. The CPI was the thing that moved the market quite a bit, and I mentioned a few times that the big focus on interest rates and the dollar and all that at some time that'll disconnect or go away. Markets, institutions won't talk about it anymore. And if you think about it, when's the last time you heard about CPI? Many, many, many years ago. Right? Because whatever, inflation wasn't such a big deal. And so now 40 years later it is, and lo and behold, CPI is a big focus. So as far as anything moving big today, I suspect not. NASDAQ futures, they actually, they peekabooed under the low down here. It's just that typical pattern and why we focus on the concept of a greater than 100% retracement. When prices move from one area, like this retraced up here greater than 100%, and it stalled, didn't mean it was coming down here, but now that it has greater than 100%, our expectation is for a stall. As I mentioned yesterday, if it chops around down here at the weekly into the latter part of the week, and just based on being at the support, if it can't rally up at all, that's going to mean it's going down. Because when it gets down here, this is where the demand is, where buyers are. And okay, buy low, sell high, see what happens. And if it just jiggles around down here and does nothing, especially if it forms a topping tail bar. And so if this was to pop up, tomorrow, whatever it is, and get rejected with a topping tail bar, maybe something like this, what that means. It's going lower. This isn't a topping tail bar, but this is a 60-minute chart where it pops up above the highs and it gets knocked back down. It's going lower. Yeah. Is it okay to short stocks which are holding relatively well but have nice base with something in a downtrend? Sure, Norbert. And so what I'm showing here, is applicable to all time frames. Now, you need a pattern. That's the whole idea of what we do. And some kind of a failure like that tells you, like this got extended a little bit and opens up the possibility for at least a short-term reversal into the void. And then when it happens, it immediately gets slammed. So you decide, right, as an individual, what kind of plan you trade. Do you trade counter trend trades? Nothing wrong with them. They work, but you realize that the odds are they're not going back up here. And if you get caught in something like this is how to, turn a losing trade into a winning trade by being able to recognize the failure. And if you choose not to trade that, that's fine as well. But when you see the failure happen like that, it's a shock and longs got caught. It's in a downtrend. It should go lower. And this is what we teach here. And what we utilize is looking at price patterns from the point of view that they show individuals' beliefs, how they're trading, and are their beliefs and expectations being fulfilled, or are they dashed? And if they're dashed, demand turns into supply, and if there's a void below, it goes lower. Now, that being said, you can do anything, Norbert, and you can do anything you want to do. That's what makes the markets, free for you to decide what you want to do. Now, at some point, we all create trading plans, and we can't do everything, but we can do virtually anything we want to do, right? That makes sense as long as we utilize money management, proper money management, which is share sizing. All right, let's keep going here. So similar patterns. This is not quite at the low, a little relative strength. Same pattern on the weekly. Russell. Right. Same thing. It's kind of like markets are a little boring. We're waiting for this news, the next shoe to drop. It's just, it is what it is right now. Now, as far as something that is at support, it's been there before. This got rejected. It's just hanging down here. It's kind of just waiting. Nothing happening there in Bitcoin. Just little moves up and down. Sometimes we look at other markets, maybe that we don't trade. Start looking at, currency futures. This was in a long downtrend, but the momentum has slowed, not doing too much. In Canada, similar patterns here. So the dollar is stabilizing, and bonds and yields are stabilizing near the high. Right? So Australian dollar going down, and the euro, backing off. But look, where's the dollar? All these symbols here. I lose track of them sometimes. Oh, here we go. And so what we see, right, we talked about this pullback that was coming here and watching for the turn. And I said, that's going to jitter the markets. And now the momentum here is it's reaching this prior high. It's a little extended. And you've got institutions that are looking at these intermarket relationships and saying, hey, could this possibly make an M top and maybe the markets will rally? Or will this keep going and make new highs and the markets move lower? So there's this hesitancy right now, which is causing this uncertainty about which way the market's going to go. And looking at, the 5-year, we see a similar pattern as this is moving up. And so these yields and dollar don't always move in lockstep, but this is let's call it a special moment in time. This is one of the things I'm going to be talking about on Thursday in this webinar that I'm going to do. So you should sign up. It's going to be interesting. It's not going to be my typical price patterns, which that's always good stuff to go over, and different relationships and concepts that we talk about. This is going to be more about intermarket analysis and market internals, which I typically don't get too deep into. Yeah, I'll share it, Robert. And so, we have these situations here where institutions are, and everybody, if you know what to look at, are like, which way is this thing going to go? It's been going up for a long time. How high can it go? Well, these trends typically go higher than we believe that they would. That's been my experience, and that's why I refrain or avoid using terms like overbought and oversold, where we could say, hey, that's extended. One of the things I say, overbought can become more overbought because it's a meaningless term to me. I know you know what it means, but it creates a belief that something cannot go higher. And it totally, especially when you apply indicators to it, it's totally erroneous. Now, recognizing that momentum begins to stall, the distance between the pivots here, getting closer together, and then it pulls back to next support, and then momentum picked up again. But this is in an uptrend. Anyway, so there's some comfort in knowing why the markets are not doing too much. Credit spreads are good when the markets aren't doing too much. So there's different vehicles and tools for different markets. So these are not great. This isn't a great environment for directional trades yet, as these markets trying to figure out which way they're going to go. So that keeps you out of certain trades that could chop you up, from a swing perspective, from a daily perspective. I shared with everybody in the room that short setup that most don't see. Go back here and show it on the 5-minute. Most don't see that because it's over here. Was this little, I guess you could see it more as a bear flag, but what I explained was you don't take this one, you take the second one, the higher high. So, but most don't, they hesitate from doing this as a short because it makes a higher low, higher high. But that's, after this move down, this momentum move down, and I mentioned it when this bar was forming rather than making everybody aware of it here because I stepped away to eat something and came back. But anyway, this is a good setup for a short. It's higher high, higher low within the downtrend. All right. And pretty much everything is just waiting here. Transports, a little bit of a higher low. And cruise lines were getting pounded yesterday. So something in here was holding up. I don't know what it was. I can go look, but it doesn't really matter right now because I'm not going to want to buy anything in there. I'm going to do it right now. So I think the downside, McGraw, rather than the upside, since it's stabilizing at this low, 35 and a quarter, 35.30. So support has got to be this low right here, which is 35.84. This bar that closed on the low. 30, 35, 35. Yeah, it was 35. I have to go back here. When I wrote that down was a little while ago. They're moving around a little bit. It's pulling back. 35. Now they zeroed it out. But, you got to look how things are moving there. Things are pulling back. So 35, 35, 35, 30 in there. On the upside, I had written down 36.85. But with this trying to make a turn, it's pulling back here. 36.85, I think is a little too close for comfort with, the markets down here. If something should ignite a turn up, I don't see why that should happen other than it just being at support, right? This could be, I'm saying it could be a flush week in the data. Yeah, absolutely. It could be a flush week. Look, you've got this topping tail that took out the highs and it's just hanging here. Again, the markets are waiting and, to get that flush, maybe 3 days going sideways here. And then, the news comes out, CPI and all that. So be nimble, later in the week is where things are likely to start moving. Unless they look at silver and, that's pulling back, could be a buy setup here. As this is pulling back, we'd want to see some stabilization. Usually, 2-3 days here. It's pulling back a little deep, but, the dollar is in question now because of what I just showed you. Gold pulling back as the dollar went up. Things are relatively tight, and this is pulling back here. So maybe oil stocks being day trade short ideas, since this got extended. Might want to take a look at that. You can see, XLE started pulling back. It's a little weak, some room to drop. So buyers probably don't want to show up until here. So as a day trading idea, maybe some oil stocks or, you can decide call spreads, but, since it's up at this resistance, if there's premium. So that's about it. So far, it looks like could be another, boring day. These were negative this morning. This was down about 120 early on. Then it was positive. Now it's kind of flattish. So don't become complacent, meaning don't get too comfortable. That's when the market will move. But what about resistance number? Well, like I said, I had written down 36.85, but I think the downside might have the better protection since prices are on support, and that number is below this weekly bar here, which is your significant number here for the week, Rob, or significant reference point technically, because below that it just opens up the door to things starting to waterfall lower. And, we talked about where that would be. And it's somewhere in this big green area, looking at the monthly chart. There's no clearly defined spot. Now, we look at the weekly, maybe, deep, opening that up. And I open it up, and what do you see here? You don't see any clearly defined support under here. So that's a void. So, if you get one of these pop-ups and it gets slammed right back down again, this gap fill here, I see it. I don't, whether that touched it or not, it's so damn close. Whereas if you look at the Dow, I've been pointing this out in the newsletter over the last few weeks, that this area here on the Dow has a big gap. And so that's a better reference point down here, just above 28. I think it's 28,200 and something. You can see, what's that close there? 28,323, right? So that has an open gap. So That was a clear open gap on the Dow, and I have an alert there. So yeah, we're watching all this stuff, right? So all yours, Dan.
Good morning. So yesterday I was ad nausea, morning and afternoon. I was saying that there's no potent reversal. And so I didn't want to do any swing trades. And I said, to go long or short from this, I was hoping we'd bobble around a little bit. So anyway, I'm not going to repeat it, what Greg was talking about, but yeah, same situation here. I think we might just bobble around until either the Fed minutes or CPI, PPI. A couple things here. Our mark, we still have half lot of a put spread. Looks great. Coin is gapping up on some news. It's a bottoming pattern, trading range, but 30-minute high. I like that for put spread. Airlines are in action here today. AAL giving some positive financial news. So this one, I just scanned a couple of them, and when we trade double bottoms, we need the potent reversal. Otherwise, it's been a downtrend. And so now this was the best looking double bottom on airlines here. So let's 30-minute high. This is an idea. The news was kind of trashing Biden for his pre-celebration of the railroad strike, settling it, of the labor, the rail unions or whatever. And it just sounded so political to me. He's like, "Oh, I'll get this done. I don't want the economy wrecked even more ahead of elections." And now the news comes out that no, the union turned it down. So let's see if there's any patterns to trade with or against the setup. So that these rails are bad. I'm actually shocked the markets are not down more on this rail news, because remember when it first came out, the market and the transports and obviously the rails, there was, I forget exactly what day it was, but it's probably on one of these 2 days, I'm guessing. But look at Charlie Papa. So this one is better than some of those others I looked at already. And let's see if we can take out yesterday's high with the bad news. And then we got a double bottom. And a weekly and monthly, or that looks like a triple top on the monthly with a price void. I'm actually shocked that has not fallen already. Relative, look at the spiders. Look, that cracked. So so I could use some help today scanning railroads, airlines. Let's see what else they have over here. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I know it's Canadian Pacific, so yeah, Canadian too. All right, look at this little guy. LASE, recent IPO, gapping. That's a nice bullish shock gap. I have point in my other computer, so let's put lace here, bottom right. Look at this AMV I saw moving. On another recent IPO, crazy. Wow, crazy price action. This thing gapped up to 240. Is that real? I can blow up a 15-minute chart. Yeah. No, that's not true. That's $30. Whatever. But I like yesterday's 15-minute base, but it's ripping here pre-market. That's a $5 bar right there. Apron, nasty downtrend here. That's just power dumping, but it has a nice gap. Let's see, 30-minute high. Could be a counter trend little pop. B-Set I saw here, Bassett. I didn't even know this company was public. Bassett Furniture. But the gap's excessive. I don't know what's going on with him, but the gap's too big for me. Lyft we mentioned yesterday is looking very, very weak. Look at this poor thing, all-time lows. And now something happened pre-market. That looks obviously like news. That big wide range igniting in pre-market right now. That's what we call a bull sandwich, which is a bearish continuation pattern. So keep that on your short watch list. Wow, Alex, that is amazing. I just looked at mine. I only have in my account, I only have one, and my dad's only four. So that's amazingly light too, I gotta say. Yeah, so but think about that. Well, we'll come back and talk about it later. Your open positions is a function if you're an objective trader of your confidence of what's going on at the time. So it's actually a very consistent message that Alex and I are both portraying right there. And you got sick of me saying yesterday all afternoon, I'm not doing anything. I said, give me all your best trade ideas and don't get mad when I shoot 95% of them down. And that's because the same conversation. All right, TSM semis, got hurt yesterday even more with Biden, restricting some sales to China. Look at that little head and shoulders with a well, technically not a 180, but that is a 3-bar 180 reversal on the monthly with a price void. So that still looks lower. Daily, weekly, monthly, they look lower until they give us a bottoming pattern. So TSM, that's obviously Taiwan semiconductor. Wow, this was an M top on the monthly. So that, these monthly charts, somewhere $60, they look lower. Well, shoot, now it's 64. It's getting there. Forge. This looks halted right now. And that looks like a real spike to 45 this morning. Now you got 3 dots. So that looks halted, but 20, even if it opened here at 22 and change, the gap's too big, but something's going on with that. Reiner Air, I talked about. McGraw mentioned Saping as a possible kind of option trade. The weekly is good, McGraw, but it came in with a 180, so it just needs to stabilize. Jamie Dimon had an interview with somebody saying the markets can fall another 20%. There's no potent reversal here. This has to take out yesterday's high. All right, coin we talked about, 30-minute high, Joby. Bullish gap in a downtrend, no interest. So American, I think, is the one who started off the good news in the sector here today. So, I mean, if Delta closes here, that's a put spread. Here's the sector, jets. So yeah. I mentioned that if this looks it's weaker than the other airlines because so much more oversold. But let's see how it closes. Leg did some pre-announcement that's getting whacked, but buyers are stepping up on the gap down. Lulu, I think, got an upgrade, but no pattern. So there's CSX looks horrible. And they're down a lot, but they look lower. ACZ, why am I looking at you? I do not remember. This is oh, that's why. They must have had some number. All right, I just opened the opening print down here. 3440, but that's too big for me. A deer was on our watch list yesterday, but it closed with a topping tail. GPRE. I forget why I'm looking at you. Lima whiskey, relative strength.